lack of FE to just come out and be like, everybody's stupid.
There's so many different kinds of intelligence, though.
Yeah, I was just going to say, define it better, but I'd say overall, yes.
Based on what data? Or is this a cognitive bias that you're employing currently?
I don't
This
think
is
people
my
are.
misanthropy
I think they're just
speaking.
ignorant.
See, that's NI, I think. NITE, that's an NITE thing, for sure.
Thinking people are stupid.
K is intuiting that. TE is as the cold grip.
I mean, here's the thing. I've known plenty of both kinds of people. People that would be deemed not intelligent, quote unquote, and people who would be deemed intelligent. And one conclusion I think it's fair to draw is that it's often possible and even likely for people that are objectively less intelligent to make the right choice for the wrong reason, and for people who are objectively more intelligent to make the wrong choice for the right reason. I think that happens all the time. So I don't necessarily think there's any inherent advantage to being intelligent.
I think it could be argued that there's a disadvantage for being intelligent in many ways, many aspects of life.
Yeah,
Generally
but
speaking,
yeah,
the more
I agree
intelligent
with
you
that
are,
for sure. But I'm talking specifically about being right. Like that's what these guys were probably talking about last night. They were saying, well, how do you affect meaningful change in the world?
What are you, Thursday?
And they
Maybe.
received a response that said, well, you can't because people are too stupid. And so my response to that is number one, even if that's the case, that doesn't mean they're more likely to make the wrong choice. And number two, whether or not the reason they make a given choice is significant is itself a significant question.
Oh, that's cool. Then some people have depression. I'm not surprised.
What?
Actually, it, except in England, they're like the higher the IQ of a country, the higher like the general IQ, the higher the suicide rate. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's.
I like wrote a
That's
paper on it in high school or something. That's the only reason why I remember that.
Why not?
Maybe that means that IQ isn't necessarily a scale of intelligence.
It's, I think it was just capacity. Right?
well, there are different IQ tests out there, so
I I suspect it correlates with intuitives. And so probably populations with higher percentages of intuitives score higher in general on IQ tests, and populations with lower percentages of IQ of intuitive score lower, and that's the actual correlate if there is one.
Huh. You think N score higher on IQ tests?
And as a general rule, yeah,
Interesting.
IQ tests are the sort of thing that ends think up in the first place.
But what exactly would be the cause? Is that like some type of like if there is it
Abstractly.
like is with more moving parts, you have a higher chance of malfunction? Something like that? Like a more complex mechanism could break in more ways?
Well,
Something like that? What would be the
it's
cause? And what's the
because
actual
the
proof?
ends operate in a world of meaning, and meanings,
Punishment.
life
IQ.
meanings are slabs that move in and settle in, and then other life things have to be built around those slabs. So at a certain point, if one makes a lot of choices that turn out to be regrettable, then one builds a lot of slabs around oneself that preclude one from fixing things, fixing one's own identity. If you think about your nature, your identity, the self, as something that you're building on an ongoing basis, then it's obvious that the current incarnation of you is not the final incarnation of you. But it's equally true that you carry with you the burden of your past, and all of your past mistakes are carried along with you. And events that have already occurred cannot be undone. So, as a consequence, if the latter reality overwhelms the former, then one might enter into a state of genuine despair, and namely sorrow without hope. And in a state of despair, there's no meaningful reason to stay alive. It's because definitionally you can't see any way out. However,
That's interesting that you say that. I was watching a documentary, and this psychologist said that the words that people who commit suicide would attribute to their reasoning is shame and the feeling of being trapped. So those are the two top reasons for people committing suicide, I guess. Those feelings.
I think N-types would be more inclined to not feel trapped.
well, that's why it's important to factor in the slabs. It's true that NE types are naturally going to try to find ways out. And I think that NE types are the type that is maybe ultimately more likely to be driven by the shame aspect of things. And I think to the extent that I would ever have been moved to do that, it was because of shame, not trappedness. Although people can be trapped, and in that regard, there may be a legitimate reason to believe yourself trapped, either by your past mistakes, by any number of different things. So in that circumstance, one can imagine any Dom feeling as though they had blown their chance and they needed to start over, but they couldn't. So
You can't go back in time.
Yeah. The problem is, an S type will ultimately be about sensing stuff. So if they can be comfortable and have their needs met, then they're going to be happy. They don't need their identity to be crafted with these various meanings, but ends do.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Wait, what was it? I missed it.
You missed it.
I said S's are satisfied by sensory experiences in the moment as long as they're comfortable and having their needs met right now. They aren't too concerned about their identity as a character in the minds of others.
Okay.
So would it be fair to say that S's would be better at meditation, but N's need meditation more?
Well, I mean, there are different understandings of the word meditation. By most conventional understandings, I think of it as being a practicing of SE.
I'm really listening. I'm just being played.
The practicing of SE is one in which you try to shut off the meaning-making processes and just experience the moment in the moment. So that's the anti-N meditation.
There's a biological effect of meditation.
Okay. That would be S related, yeah. The thing is, it makes sense for intuitives to try to shut down meaning making sometimes because it's the alternative to where we always are. Hey, can you guys mute if you're going to be that loud? Courtney?
Oh, sorry.
Can you mute?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So, what was I talking about? Yeah.
You said
Um,
that ends. They they should be shutting off the meaning making
oh, right. Ends
process.
do
Something.
benefit from some management of that vector of meaning making versus sensing, in the sense that here's an example of managing it. For me, when I go out into the wilderness, as I sometimes do, I used to do more. I mean, I had a good reason to go out there when I had a dog, you know. But when I go out there, I noted that one impact of being out there that was positive on me was being in an environment where there was no symbols. There were no words to be read. There were no pictures to be seen. There were no numbers to be looked at. It was just non-symbolic stuff. It helped me to not make so many symbol-driven connections and meanings like I normally would. For me,
That's
that was a positive thing.
interesting because when people are like, for instance, on psychedelics, they often go into nature to find meaning in a symbolism and uh, I don't know. That's kind of like the. I always thought nature was very symbolic, but
Well, I think when they say that, when they say things like, "Oh, well, that's where I get my meaning," what they mean is, I'm tired of living in a abstract symbol-driven world that has a bunch of distance between me and experience itself, and the experience itself doesn't need us to talk about it. It doesn't have any particular talking points. It isn't a talking thing. So, SI may spend some time revisiting, rehashing the experience. And in that regard, it may employ some talking elements. But by and large, the benefits and the joy and the meaning of the experience is experienced in the moment and then lost until you experience a new experience. It's not about making meaning. You're such an intuitive that you can't even conceive of a world where um, the meaning of the thing couldn't be talked about abstractly. I get you. I'm the same kind of person.
mhm.
Um,
Like if I were to go into a forest and then I encounter an animal, I would instantly be like, I wonder what this animal usually symbolizes in these other tribes, and then I would assume that it had some sort of strange meaning to my life, or not assume, but I would find it a fun activity to ponder that.
right. You find a way to make it meaningful to you, as I do with everything. So, I'm always looking. I'm on the lookout for magical thinking opportunities where something unpleasant or unusual or a combination of the two happens, and I'm supposed to learn something from it, or perhaps it happened to prevent something worse from happening that would have happened had that thing not happened, and all sorts of shit like that goes through my head.
It's
So,
funny you say that, because I think INTPs are it's strongly linked, according to this one website. I don't know how reliable that source is, but schizotypal personality disorder, which is basically like a magical thinking disorder, is related to INTPs, and I'm not sure if ENTPs are also prone to it, but
I mean, I wouldn't call it a disorder. It's one of a series of frameworks I employ. There's no reason inherently to think that it's superior or inferior to the other frameworks.
no, I'm saying that like let's say an INTP gets too obsessed with meaning, it can literally consume their entire mind and their persona, and that's the only way they know how to communicate is through these like magical thinking monologues or whatever.
I think that sounds like IFP. like giving meaning to seeing an animal walk by, or is it not more FI?
Well, that animal walk by thing is a little bit. I mean, that tends to be. I think. I don't know. It's hard to say. The point is, if you're. It depends what kind of relations you make between an event and the abstraction.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily ever equivocate symbolism with some kind of magical thinking.
No, not
I
necessarily.
mean, like, but symbolism is often like, okay, if you, like, people are like, oh, it's a bad luck for a black cat to walk in front of you, that's, like, superstitious, and that's a symbol, and it is also magical to believe that that's a bad omen.
Yeah, I think that's more of an INFP.
But look, the thing about it is this: things like that, events like that, they occupy a certain amount of mind space when they happen. And the amount and nature of the attention you provide to that particular event and the subsequent event is gonna color and shape the way in which subsequent events are linked back through your larger narratives. So if you put a lot of focus on that black cat and the significance of that event, then you're choosing to attend and observe its significance as a storyline into existence. It's the power of observation. It's also the power of creation, right? You are making manifest something that was not existent prior to your manifesting it. And when you do that, it has impact. It at least informs the other shit that happens in your life, because you have some memory of having made that manifest and of putting that time into it. So when future things happen and you go to reference things that are similar or related or barely related or whatever, your cognitive processes reach around and find that sitting there still because you invested a certain amount of metaphysical weight into it when you attended to it in the first place. And then it draws that link, returning your attention to it, reinforcing its existence. So through that process, there's your answer.
That does not sound INTP at all to me, personally.
I mean, I sort of spend a lot of time, um, actively, like, discounting any superstitious beliefs that pop up into my mind because I know that they're not logical, you know. But I also tend to get bored with being so sane, so I sort of I feel like I do this thing where I kind of drive myself insane purposely, temporarily, so that I can have something to think about. So it's not necessarily like a constant in my life. I can turn it on or off, but I don't know.
Young was an INTP too, and he attributed a lot of symbolism to the external world. So maybe it is an INTP thing.
Why do you feel so passionately that you need to quash superstition?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, because it's not good for my mental health. I guess. Yeah, mostly.
What does that mean?
If you're overly superstitious, you can kind of go into a paranoid state of trying to almost outsmart fate in a weird way, seeing an omen and then being like, oh well, now I have to do this, and then I have these rituals, these obsessive compulsive disorder rituals,
Okay.
where I do things over and over to dispel whatever omen I just think I encountered or came my way.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that.
I know I shouldn't, but that's not exactly how people work.
Proper magical thinking is reactive, not proactive.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Proper magical thinking is reactive, not proactive.
Hmm.
I always thought it was NE. in the INTPs that allowed them to at least consider the possibilities of these kinds of things, or to at least entertain the idea.
I agree 5,000,000%.
That's what that's NE. Like I won't jump into and buy into a belief system and become emotional about it. I'll acknowledge, or at least observe, things that are you would call magical thinking. I think that's NE.
Yeah, but a specific, just like a tarot cards.
It
They're
works
evil.
as a way to bolster faith in whatever course of action you end up doing anyway. So you want to try to draw links to what you're going to end up doing, to things I'm supposed to learn from that, or things I'm going to do differently next time, like that kind of a framework. So if you afford meaning to it, the only thing that I think is meaningful in a magical thinking capacity is to say, I want to assume an external observer that purposes me in some fashion. That being unpurposed as an agent entity in the universe is an unsustainable identity burden for me. I have to be purposed in some capacity. And, you can take from that whatever you wish. But however that manifests magically, it should link everything back into some core central purpose and shouldn't, I think, devolve into pettiness like, did I turn the door handle 3 times or something like that? Because that's not purposeful enough. That's just wasting my time.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more. It's not like the rituals are something that I enjoy doing. It's just something
Yeah,
that
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. That was poor FE on my part. I'm sorry. I didn't intend to. I was just saying. Well, yeah, you shouldn't do that.
I
No,
can
obviously
logically
you're saying that
understand
you shouldn't do
everything
that.
you're saying, and I know that everything that I'm doing is completely ridiculous and absurd.
I need a haircut.
It's just a compulsion.
Well, I feel lucky not to have a problem with magical thinking as a compulsion. I do have other issues, behavioral issues like smoking and smoking pot, and I don't drink alcohol anymore. But
Are you in AA, or did you just decide that you didn't want to?
I was in AA for how long? I'd
Do you think
say
it?
6 months or so.
I was in there for a month, and I gathered that it was a cult, and I left, and now I'm drinking again.
Oh well, see, that's the thing. You have to be able to manage the leap to meta rationalism. I'll explain it to you right now, and you'll be able to solve your problem once you think it through and accept all of the tenets of what I'm going to tell you right now. Here's how you have to quit drinking, and the only way it's going to work. You have to accept steps 1 and 2 of Alcoholics Anonymous, and maybe 3. I forget what 3 is. I think it's what 1 and 2 though. That number 1, you have to accept that you're powerless over alcohol and that your life has become unmanageable, and that alcohol makes your life unmanageable. You accept that central truth, and that you can't ever drink alcohol again. You're gonna have to actually quit it and leave it, and not ever drink it. Okay, you have to accept those 2 basic realities. They're difficult to accept because you can NETI your way to a million different proofs that it's bullshit. And so what's required of you is to accept a utilitarian justification for the whole thing, that you have to accept faith into the equation as the magical thinking mechanism to use and have it be properly attributed, which means God. You gotta have to go with that whole thing. And look, the thing is, remember this. You can still insist that you're an atheist for the purposes of any discussion on the matter. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. And you can make those claims and make those arguments. And at the same time, you can engage in the behavior of prayer and of actively trying to believe in a God that you, for the purposes of argumentation, would dispute the existence of. That's your job, right? To quit alcohol. That's your job. The thing is, until we get over the hubris that somehow our logic and will are going to save us from this problem, we will never get over it. And so your logic and your will aren't going to save you from this problem, except insofar as your logic finds this particular line of reasoning I'm presenting you as sound, and insofar as your will obeys your logic, which we already both know it does not. It's a spiritual problem and it requires a spiritual solution. You don't get attached to it. You don't have to be attached to it. There's no reason to be attached to it. You utilize it for its prescribed purpose, tuck it away. It's there to pull out when you need it. And you don't have it impact any of your arguments. It doesn't impact any of mine. I'll still say I'm an atheist if you want to argue about it, you know. And also, when I'm done, maybe I'll pray. It's okay to do both those things because they're not the same category of thing. Prayer is a behavior, and belief in God or expressing claims or statements about God is an argument. Different matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that part wasn't really the culty. I mean, that's like a culty-ish thing, a cultish thing, you know, the prayers and all that. But what kind of bothered me was the idea that you can't get sober on your own, you know? They sort of were like, if you leave AA, you will fail and you will drink, you know? And it was a little silly, you know, kind of like a. Then, I don't know, it was just also kind of weird to me that these people were holding on to things that happened many, many years ago and still talking about it and still expecting their wounds to be licked after, I don't know, so long. It didn't even seem like it was like to teach people newcomers a lesson or anything, or it just seems like I don't know. It must be a relief for them to think that all of their problems were because of alcohol when that really wasn't the case. In fact, you probably had problems that made you become an alcoholic.
Not me. All my problems are because of alcohol, and my alcoholism was inborn.
I mean, it obviously varies person to person.
Not much.
But
But the point is this: Alcoholics Anonymous, when I needed them, they were there. I went in there, I went to a bunch of meetings. When I was in China and Shanghai, all I did was go to AA meetings. I haven't been to a meeting in a couple of years, at least. And I have plenty of intellectual objections to a lot of things that they do. But I will forever be grateful to them for being there and holding my hand when I needed them to be there and hold my hand. They're very good at that. And
I
there's
also
not anybody
think
else who's there to do that in a meaningful way.
I just also think that people forget that maybe it's not the 12 steps that's helping them, but the fact that you are now surrounded by people that are embracing you with open arms, you know, and everybody knows that like addiction, uh, well, it's kind of like a more recent thing. Addiction is a lot of times because people feel like they have a lack of meaningful relationships in their life, you know? And then once they find a good support group, then they're great. So people forget often that, like, oh, maybe it's not the 12 steps, and it's really just that I have this group of people who's supporting me, you know?
Well, it's the humility of forsaking one's own will on the matter. That's what actually works. Is saying, I'm going to stop fighting. I'm going to stop trying to think for myself. I'm going to stop being intellectually independent as an entity. Even though there is nothing in the world that's more frightening to me than the prospect of that. I'm going to give my intellect over to these others as much as I can.
That sounds so culty. It's like, it's very spooky to me.
Because all they're trying to do is get you to stop drinking.
It's very possible that there are benefits of joining a cult.
And it doesn't matter. First of all, you'll find that you can't forsake your moral agency like you fear you can, no matter how much you try to. You can, however, do the things they say. You can get down on your knees and pray. You can do that behavior. So at a certain point, you go, okay, well, I can do all these behaviors they're telling me to do if I wanted to, but I don't want to. well, that's the humility. Do it anyway. I don't want to write this journal thing that you say. It's fucking stupid. But you better write it then, Eric. That's what I would tell myself. It's humbling. I mean, the bottom line is my own will and my own intelligence never saved me from alcohol. They never would. Never will.
May I ask how long you were drinking?
When I started drinking when I was 16, I drank steadily, you know. It got worse over time. I quit when I was 42. I didn't stay with AA very long, but I appreciate the fact that they were there for the AA stage, as you might call it, which is about 6 months, I think, for me, when I
Hmm.
needed them. And I split up with them over marijuana because um, I didn't want to hide the fact that I was smoking pot, and I didn't want to be judged for it. And I didn't have option C, which is not hide it and not be judged.
Yeah, I feel like everyone should have their own definition of uh, sobriety in a way. Like I don't think everyone's sober goal should be the same. Like I strongly believe that some people have moderation issues, and that if they can just learn and make a habit of limiting themselves, then they will, and then they'll like learn to be a casual drinker again. I don't know. They always say that that's the alcoholic's delusion.
Yeah, you
Or
won't.
what'd you say?
I said you won't. That's my prediction. Otherwise, you wouldn't care about it so much.
I don't actually care. It's just fun to talk about mostly.
I mean, look, the thing is this. In my experience, you sound young, and you're already in Alcoholics Anonymous, just like I was when I was young. And I quit for like a year, and I started drinking again, and then eventually it got the better of me. It hasn't fully gotten the better of you yet. It's not going to improve. That's my prediction. That might be bad of me, ontologically violent, trying to pigeonhole you into an addictive future that you, if encouraged properly, might have very well the will to resist. Possibly. But if you're an NTP, there are always so many reasons to do or not do things, so many possible good justifications, so many excuses. And there's a thirst we don't really quite understand, but it's persistent. I don't know. That's my experience. I tried my best to figure my way out of that shit for decades. Never could. The only thing that helped sometimes was I smoke enough pot, then I wouldn't really want to drink quite as much. That helped me sustain for a while longer, but what the fuck was I fighting for that whole time? Wasted life? Being drunk or slightly drunk or anything from not drunk at all to blackout drunk was a waste of my life. I never did anything meaningful when I was drinking. I did things that were memorable maybe, and then discovered later they weren't really very memorable. Um, Pot's supposed to make you lazy. Alcohol makes me unable to get shit accomplished in any meaningful sense. Anything sustained.
I I miss marijuana. I used to be able. I didn't even drink at all when I was smoking weed, but I started hallucinating. So like every time I would smoke, so my psychiatrist was like, "Well, that's not the best idea." It is a mild hallucinogen, but the intensity of the hallucinations were. But I don't know. I remember feeling very productive and creative and all that jazz uh, when I was smoking weed. What?
Well, you've obviously got stuff going on that I know nothing about. So you probably should take whatever you think is useful from whatever it is I'm saying. I mean, everyone's got their own opinions about this shit. My point is, you don't need AA, but AA is not a bad thing. A lot of people do need it, and they don't know how to sustain a decision without the feeling staying there, right? So as an ENTP, I need to learn how to sustain the decision without the feeling in general in life. And it's something that therefore is not as necessary for me to stay close to that feeling stuff as it might be for most people in AA.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess I just hope that I'm never really searching for like an end, like a conclusion to anything. I just like hearing other people's opinions, and I'm
Yeah,
not
sure.
like
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed saying all that stuff because I thought I said it really well. And I like it when I make videos where I sound like I'm smart and it sounds like it went fluid and stuff. And if it makes you feel any better, I don't really care about your problem very much.
That makes me feel a lot better. Thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, because then it sort of turns into like a therapy session, and nobody wants to be
No, it's a media.
broadcasted
It's
on.
media making. See, that's the thing. People understand that we're making a video, but they tend to forget that I'm remembering that we're making a video. Sometimes I do genuinely forget, but in this instance, I was aware that we're making one. So I was thinking about it from a media making perspective. When I am thinking about it from a media making perspective, I'm thinking about your problem only in how it plays to an audience, And I thought that played quite well. And I think that we'll leave this part in. I'll do a little editing probably on this one. I'll leave this part in to uh, make everything above board. I like to make explicit this kind of yeah. Thank you for watching, talking with famous people. Thank you, yeah, thank you for watching. You were wonderful watchers, and I watched you. Wonderful watching and watching you. Watching, talking with famous people.